I hope you can hear me. I'm at a place called Dannok on the Thai-Malaysia border. There's a lot of big trucks going down into Malaysia and Singapore. They're making a lot of noise. There's also a group of people doing some canvassing for an election. They're also making a lot of noise. Anyway, this is one of the 9 crossing points between Thailand and Malaysia. The crossing between Langkawi and Satun is a sea crossing, and all the rest are land crossings. I did an update here about a year ago, so it's about time I came back to do another one. I don't normally come here. There's nothing I want or need in Danok. I just really come here out of personal interest to see what's happening and also to do these video updates. It's Monday today. It's actually Monday the 23rd of May. So I'm expecting it to be pretty quiet anyway. I would have liked to have come down a busier time for Friday, Saturday or Sunday, but I just had too many family commitments, so I have to fit these things in when I have free time. So what we see today, I wouldn't really take as an indication of the state of Danok at the moment. I'm more interested to speak to a few locals and possibly some Malaysian tourists if I find any, just to see how they feel about the situation at the moment. When I was in Hat Yai last week, I sensed an air of optimism. Things have been bad for a long time, but people now are beginning to think that it will return to normal fairly soon. When I was in Danok a year ago, it was really depressing. There was just no end in sight to COVID. But now the situation may have improved slightly. The politicians are coming back and they're continuing to make a lot of noise along with the big container trucks. I don't want to go too near the border post with a camera and be arrested for being a threat to national security, so I'll just take a stroll around these back roads near to the border and give you a bit of background about Danok. So what is it? Well, it's a border crossing, so there's an immigration station and customs and lots of commercial vehicles go down to Malaysia and Singapore from Thailand and back up again. There are no natural resources in Singapore, so everything that goes into the country goes through Singapore's port or by road through Malaysia. As I said before in my videos, the places I found most interesting in Thailand are border towns, especially on the Thai-Burma border, but also on the Thai-Malaysian border. Every country is different. Malaysia is a Muslim, very conservative country, and Thailand is very relaxed about most things. And so if there's a demand for something in Malaysia that's quite difficult to come by, and it can be found sort of just across the border, you know, a matter of yards across the border, then people will cross the border. So certain places have sprung up in Danok that aren't easy to find in Malaysia. So even a long time ago, there were, you know, sort of bars and other places here, and a few hotels and guest houses. These women look quite confused. I'm walking along speaking to a camera. พูดได้ไหมครับ พูดได้ครับ พูดได้ ครับ Okay. โอเคไปไหนมานี่ Just เดินเที่ยวครับ ไปไหนมาหาดใหญ่ครับ อ๋อมาหาดใหญ่ประเทศอะไร อังกฤษครับ อังกฤษใช่จะไปอังกฤษบ้างหล่อจัง Lost my พูดไทยได้ พูดไทยได้ Lost my train of thought now. So yeah, there's sort of things here that appeal to Malaysians, and if they want to come for a weekend, guest houses and little hotels, you know, that were built. This goes back years. Down this little road, there are a lot of clubs catering to Malaysian Indians when they come for their weekends across the border. And in the past, this place used to be quite busy for another reason. When I first got to Hat Yai in 2003, there are actually quite a few Farang expats. There aren't now, and very few of them had a proper visa. And what the Thai government have done to encourage tourism, they've made it very easy for people from several countries to come to Thailand for a vacation. When they arrive, they will get a stamp for a 30-day visa exemption. So this is just made, you know, to sort of encourage tourism. But it was a loophole that people exploited. So if they wanted to live in Thailand long term, what they'd do, they'd just go to the border, and this was the nearest border to Hat Yai. Exit Thailand, go into Malaysia. So they get an exit stamp from Thailand, entry stamp into Malaysia. Then just turn around, exit Malaysia, come straight back into Thailand, and get another 30 days. And they do this for years. You know, people have been living in Thailand that way for 20 years. And immigration weren't bothered at the time. Later, they closed the loophole. But it was just a sort of very common thing, sort of 20 years ago. And so there'd be vans running from Hat Yai, these border run vans, packed with Farangs, who would just get new 30-day visa exemption stamps. So 20 years ago, Danok was quite different to how it is now. You got the border point, and then quite close to the border point, you had some like little clubs and karaoke places, little restaurants, small guest houses and hotels, catering mainly to the sort of Malaysian weekend trade, mostly men coming over. But then something changed, and they sort of tried to, there's a big truck going past, they tried to sort of make it more into a mainstream resort, suitable for families as well. So there started to be a lot of development on the road going north into Thailand, big hotels, and they built this sort of theme park called the Asian Cultural Village, and they really tried to sort of change the flavour of Dannok. And this also coincided with changes to Hat Yai. And when I first got to Hat Yai in 2003, there was prostitution everywhere, and it was very conspicuous. You know, there were these huge bath massage places with pictures of the girls outside. It was just very, very obvious. And then gradually it started to become less conspicuous. A lot of those pictures outside the places disappeared, although the places were still in operation. And over the last few years, a lot of those places have actually disappeared, and sort of and all that type of stuff has come out to Danok. This Oliver Hotel was one of the first hotels to be built when Danok sort of started its new era of development. There's a line of karaoke shops and clubs next door to it. And when it was first built, it seemed miles from the border crossing, but now it actually seems quite near, because so much more development has taken place even further down the road. The type of businesses here are very similar to Hat Yai around Lee Garden Plaza, you know, little salons, massage places, the sort of things that weekend tourists require. I just spoke to one lady Muslim vendor, and she told me basically the same things I heard last week in Hat Yai, that things are slightly better, but there's still a long way to go. I can't quite remember, but I think this 7-Eleven might have been closed when I was here a year ago, and now it's open, which is a good sign. Also, I'd like to thank everyone with the comments from the last video. I was absolutely amazed at how many people have responded and all the great information I got. Because my assumption about the problem with tourism just being insurance wasn't quite right. There are several other reasons, and people explain those in the comments. So many thanks for that. And a special thanks to John Rambo, who answered a lot of comments. People had asked questions, and I wasn't sure about the answers, but he had just made a trip to Hat Yai from Malaysia, and he was able to answer a lot of questions, so a big thank you for that. As I said before, this is a Monday, and Danok is really a weekend place, so we'd expect it to be quiet today. So what we're seeing today shouldn't be taken as an indication of how things are. I just popped into 7-Eleven to get a drink and asked the girl behind the counter how things were, and she said there were a lot of Malaysians at the weekend. I asked how many, she said about 70%. And in Hat Yai there's not even 10% of the pre-COVID number of tourists, so there is definitely a recovery underway in Danok. In the past there was nothing for families at all in Danok, it was just for single men, or maybe married men as well. Since the sort of new redevelopment, that there are things. There's this shrine here for merit making, there's a few little parks, and the cultural village is quite nice as well. When I was here last year it was closed. I'm going to pop along there a bit later and see if it's open yet. There's a pleasant little park and recreational area just next to the Indian Ganesh shrine. And one thing I found with Thais over the years is that they're not very good at estimating. You know, if you want to know how far somewhere is, and they say 100 meters, and you find it's like 10 kilometers, or if they say it's 10 kilometers, it's actually just a sort of 100-meter walk. And I asked, there's a girl working in the shrine, and I asked her if there were Malaysian tourists back at the weekend. She said yes. So I asked her sort of roughly how many percent compared to pre-COVID, and she said 20, whereas the girl in 7-Eleven told me 70. So somewhere in between 20 and 70%. I'm really not sure. One of the great things about Thailand is the tolerance towards religion. Thais are predominantly Buddhist, but there are a lot of Muslims in the south. But it doesn't matter what religion people follow, there is always complete tolerance in Thailand. Health and safety is never a great thing in Thailand. Here we have a flight of stairs that just leads to a 20-foot drop, perfect for young kids. The Asian cultural village is still very much closed. I asked the girl at the shrine and she said it was open, but she either got it wrong or she didn't understand what I meant. Inside there's a dinosaur park, there's horse riding, there's some theme restaurants, there's sort of play areas for kids. It's quite a nice place to take the family. I took my kids over there a few years ago, but still shut, and the security guard doesn't know when it's going to reopen. Here's a miniature replica of Rong Kun Temple in Chiang Rai that they've built here. The thing about Danok is everything attractive is man-made. It's really quite artificial. The other Thai resorts are built in naturally very beautiful areas. There's some stunning coastline in other places in southern Thailand, but there's nothing here. It's mainly rubber plantations, and on the main road from Danok back into Hat Yai you pass some quite big factories where they're making rubber gloves and other products from rubber because there's so much rubber in this area. I'm going to head back to Hat Yai, and today for me personally has been quite disappointing, but it's my own fault for coming on a Monday. I really need to come on a Saturday or Sunday, but as I said before, it's very difficult with my family commitments and I just have to fit these things in when I can. I was hoping to speak to some more people today, but I haven't had very many opportunities to do that. The overall feeling is very similar to walking around Hat Yai last week. The desperation from last year has gone, some optimism is returning, but it's only just the start of the recovery and there's still a long way to go. Depending on who you talk to, either 20% of the tourists have returned or 70%, and I suspect the number is closer to 20%. And there are persistent rumours that there are going to be changes at the beginning of June or July or August. And for a full recovery to take place, All of these regulations and extra expenses need to be dropped, because at the moment there's just still too many things that are deterring people from visiting Thailand.
If I get an opportunity to visit Danok on a Saturday or Sunday, I'll make another trip. But at the moment, I can't make any promises because of my personal commitments. If you've got any comments, questions or information, please let me know in the comments below. There was loads of great information for the last video and I really appreciate that. Thank you for watching and more videos soon.